Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 11 of the anime series Aria the Scarlet AA, which was all kinds of badass. Not least of which because we are seeing just how formidable an opponent Kyo can be in what is in effect the systematic shutdown of each and every one of Akari's crew, who's out in the field trying to take her down. We're talking Fuma, Raika, Takachiho, which was a surprise, and even Shino. You know, I thought Shino was dead and buried by 3/4 of the way through this episode, until we find out, no, she has actually just barely managed to survive, but it was just absolute insanity. And much as has been speculated, you know, a lot of what Kyo is putting into use is this whole bunch of different, you know, toxins and poisons, most of which are represented by her gloved hand, you know, all of the multicolored nail polishes on them, so that she can take off her glove, slice your skin, and have various different effects, from being hallucinogenic to paralytic. You know, somebody falls on the ground, they can't move their body again and everything like that. And it's just captivating and insane. I was on the edge of my seat, especially when she's going up against Fuma, the first sort of outing in an opponent, you know, framework, where she's not merely content to take Fuma down, but she's actually going after Fuma personally in trying to, you know, disparage the honor of her clan, and that whole idea of the removal of her mask being like a nude exposure, a very sort of weakening effect, a very vulnerable effect. And she's just delighting in the fact of psychologically taking Fuma down, as well as physically. I mean, we see her clothes eaten away almost entirely, and she just thoroughly feels, you know, useless by that time. And with Kyo just delighting in that, again, as I say, it punctuates how ominous and malevolent she is. And as she's gone through the entirety of this roster, you know, do we see Akari and Shino deciding to meet her, for all intents and purposes, in this backdrop of Kyo's own design, the bridge that is very much punctuated in the OP, and time again is it revisited through the course of the series. And she has, you know, instigated a car wreck, or, you know, something to cease the thoroughfare on that bridge to make it just the epic backdrop. And one of the things I really loved about this episode from the get-go, you know, one of my sort of, it was stemming from one of my issues with the first season of Aria the Scarlet AA, was all the supernatural elements toward the end of the first season that just suddenly came out of nowhere and really sort of, you know, were nonsensical to me. Whereas very much this series has been more grounded in reality. It's still very much a fantasy reality, but it's much akin to, in my mind, the Nolan Batman trilogy, if you will. You know, the idea of things that are extra super normal to the real working world, but are still very conceivable in their form and function, from the use of the toxins being sort of akin to like a poison ivy, you know, scenario in that effect, a character like that. But the idea of using the nanowire, this super tough, super strong wire, rather than it being a product of levitation toward the start of the episode when we see Kyo coming down from her very high tier apartment, you know, down to ground level. She's stepping down multi-tier levels of this nanowire, so that there isn't a supernatural explanation for it. And much as we see this confrontation on the bridge, you know, where Shino's supposed to be sneaking up on her, and I was thinking the whole time, that's really not the best of ideas. Shino's got a sword. You don't take a sword to a gunfight. And as we see, the gun Kyo is packing is a giant hulking Gatling gun. And I was just thinking it was quite interesting that, you know, for Kyo to be so dependent on toxins and poisons and all these things, but then she pulls out a gun, and she was kind of reluctant to use it, but then she figures the form and function of it is actually befitting of this, to really prompt Akari to expose whatever these Mamiya clan techniques are that she wants to learn about. And that's another thing I really loved, is that it was, much to my speculation, her electricity powers, and the explanation of that being still based within, you know, a mixture of the biochemical, bioelectrical impulses within the human body, and through a sort of supernatural, I guess, borderline martial arts quotient, you know, the sort of rhythmic movement of a body. Can you summon this? It's kind of like the chi force, you know, the internal force that certain martial arts are dependent upon in meditation, as well as the form and function of fighting and actually going up against an opponent. And here we have Akari unleashing this. She tries it once and it sort of backfires, but then she gets herself in the zone and she does it again. And when her hand touches the end of that Gatling gun barrel, we just see this thing explode from within, even going so far as to kind of turn the tables 180-degree turn on Kyo for what she did to Fuma. She's rendered almost completely naked and down to the undies and everything, and she's completely just dumbstruck. I mean, there was a very telling note, a beat in her dialogue where she's like, when she realizes that whatever Akari's power is, it's not beholden to poisons or toxins, and she's like, well, then why am I here? Maybe I ought to leave, you know. But you get the sense that there might be something more going on here. We had an interim scene where Reki had gone to Aria in the hospital bed, you know, recuperating, and given her some kind of information. And we do see at one point, once Kyo has been effectively taken down, you know, a panning shot over to a set of feet and like this human form. You know, we knew it to be a girl and with green hair, very similar to Reki's. I was like, what's going on here? Is this going to turn out to be Reki? But of course, that was mostly to give you the idea that once you see who this person is in the machinery they're packing, this giant robotic suit with dual Gatling guns and everything, looking like something out of Metal Gear or Aliens or something like that, you know that it's not like a cybernetic hookup. It's like somebody in an actual weaponized suit, you know, walking tank kind of framework. And it blew my mind because she's basically introducing herself as being Kyo's sister, Suimitsuto. And I'm wondering, like, are they actually sisters? Are they sisters in the sense that they are both in the incorporation of the EU, this big sort of criminal, you know, criminalistic sect, if you will? I don't know, but that's where the cliffhanger leaves us. This giant confrontation set to unfold, pitched to be perfect, with Akari and Aria standing side by side against, for all intents and purposes, this Sue girl and this giant hulking mecha, like I say, with dual wielding Gatling guns, and just all hell about to break loose. I can't wait to get to this finale and see how this is all going to play out. I can't wait to see if there is any sort of final sparring. I think that's very much now, as I, you know, see where this episode is left. I think once this Sue girl is dispatched, if she can be, however that's going to go down, I think, you know, that sort of precursor prologue flash forward that was in the very first episode of Akari and Aria on the bridge facing off against each other, I think it's going to be just a final sparring match where we will see Akari having finally reached the level that she wants to have reached. You know, she, all through this episode, she's been listening back to the rules and sort of, you know, the tutelage that Aria has embodied in her, what she needs to do to be an S-class Butte and all this kind of stuff. And I think that's how it's going to play out in the end. I hope it's going to be a big-time, exciting battle with this Sue girl and this giant mecha she's roving around in. Maybe, hopefully, we'll get some hints as to the greater sort of expansive nature of the EU, because I am very curious about that. But very much do I think, you know, that flash forward, as I say, is going to be just that final sparring match where hopefully Akari will get her weapon back from Aria, and all will be said and done, and there will be a sense of closure, even though I wouldn't mind seeing another season of this particular show, even more so than a continuation of the first season and such like that. But yeah, for all of those quotients, I mean, the action, the only complaint I have about this particular episode is in some of those action sequences toward the end. It's very poorly lit, and I'm wondering if they're trying to cover up for, you know, sort of not the best quality of animation, because you can't see a lot of detail and everything like that. Just the sequences are darker than they ought to be, especially when you have a Gatling gun firing and the explosive light, you know, that's supposed to be coming from every shot and everything like that. Unless they purposely dimmed it because they were afraid of, you know, anyone epileptic watching it or causing epilepsy, something like that. But that's a minor gripe in the course of the episode, which was action-packed and just had me at the edge of my seat. And seeing how formidable, as I say, Kyo was in taking down Akari's crew, but not strong enough in the end game for Akari to reach her full potential, that electricity summoning power to take Kyo down, and then just have the carpet ripped out from under both she and Aria at the end with this giant hulking mecha. Mad exciting. Bring on the next one. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 11 of Aria the Scarlet AA, if you've seen it, if you enjoyed it as much as I did, if you love that it's more on point with the plot line, and just seeing how threatening Kyo could be, in taking down all these other girls. You know, they were very much backing Akari, which I loved toward the tail end of the last episode. And to see that, unfortunately, they weren't, you know, they didn't possess the power enough singularly. Maybe if they had all ganged up on Kyo, it would have been a different story. But the point was that this needed to be Akari's game. She needed to finally resign for herself a way to utilize her power, but also do it in a non-lethal fashion. And that was the learning curve that was brought to fruition by the end of this episode. So, love to hear from you with your speculations. Love having that conversation. And so, yeah, otherwise it'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.